Richard Ferguson is the Australian's in-house culture expert, and he's joining me today to talk about something that we have both fallen in love with, the fictional world of Julian Fellowes. It's coming to life on the big screen in the Downton Abbey movie. But digging beneath Julian Fellowes' body of work, Richard, I have fallen completely in love with Carrie Coon, Morgan Spector, and the Gilded Age. Let's start with Julian Fellowes. Who is he?
So Julian Fellowes is the Conservative member of the House of Lords. He's done the odd speech writing. But he basically came to real prominence with the 2001 film Gosford Park, which had Michael Gambon as the kind of horrible lord who dies mysteriously. But probably the most important character in the long term, even though she's just a cameo, is Maggie Smith as the acerbic aristocrat who's there as a guest. And in that role, you start to get the germ of what we call the Julian Fellowes universe, the Downton universe. Who wants Marvel universe? You want a Downton universe.
Yeah, we know the very idea of service is offensive to you, George.
That Maggie Smith prototype in Gosford Park becomes what we now know as the Dowager Countess of Grantham. And Downton Abbey comes out on ITV in Britain around the same time as a revival of Upstairs, Downstairs come out. And it becomes a bit of a drama, because Upstairs, Downstairs in the 70s was such a huge hit for the BBC. But Downton Abbey just goes wild. It becomes a huge hit in America. I think in many ways, is it the best British television show in terms of quality of the past 20 years?
I thought you didn't like him.
Well, so what? I have plenty of friends I don't like.
Downton Abbey brought the Maggie Smith character to the centre of really a drama about social change and the disruption of the ruling class, but turned it into a really delicious comedy with her as the central comic figure. And that's one of his tools, isn't it? Using theatre actors to bring a layer of gravitas to television productions.
I think that's true, but the other thing, Claire, about that comedy aspect of it is that the upstairs are not the villains. And Downton Abbey has got a lot of criticism for this because it doesn't think that there's anything wrong with the classes. The staff are very grateful, we're grateful to your ladyship, we're grateful to your lordship, and it can actually grate quite a bit.
There's a layer of historical accuracy to that. So Downton Abbey's set in Yorkshire, where my family's from, and one of my mother's aunts, famously in our family history, this is a family who lived in council housing, got a job in the Grand House, the nearby aristocratic mansion. And that was, for my mother's family, a huge triumph. The honour of serving the nobility, and also the fact that for women in that time, service was a relatively safe, relatively well-paid source of income, respectable.
Yeah, that's true. The only person who really questions the system and disrupts the system is Tom, the Irish socialist chauffeur. And he runs away with Lady Sybil. Spoiler alert, the show has been out for nearly 20 years, so guys, get over it. But spoiler alert, Lady Sybil dies during childbirth. Tom very quickly becomes a member of the family, and he might go around saying, I don't believe in these kind of patriarchal class structures. I don't want people to call me Lord so-and-so. But then he very quickly, in Downton Abbey movie, marries one of the servants who turns out is actually the heir to the fortune, and just becomes a posh person, and he just becomes a member of the family. And all these things are explored for sure. It doesn't lecture. It doesn't say these people are baddies because they lived a different life. But I also think the fact that it doesn't disrupt people's ideas too much helps it.
Although I would argue the whole show is about revolution. It starts with a death, the news of the Titanic sinking, which has killed the heir presumptive to the Grantham title and the house, which has disinherited the daughters of the family. That invites into the household the kind of middle class, distant relatives who are now going to inherit instead. And then it's about the complete destruction of the world represented by Maggie Smith, isn't it? You know, it's everything changes from that moment on.
Yeah, but Claire, I don't actually entirely agree with you, because while it's about revolution and things change, and Lord Grantham can't quite handle it, and the cook keeps saying, "Why do I have to have a freezer? Can't I just keep things in the ass?" And and Lady Grantham, the gorgeous Lady Grantham, who's American, sort of says, Is there any part of the modern world, Mrs. Padmore, that you don't want to see change? And she's like, "Well, I would like to get rid of my corsets." And that's very charming. But the thing about the revolution is that it does not disrupt them one iota. Life is slightly harder, but they still live in the big house, and everybody still says, "Oh, we love you, your lordship, we love you." Like, they're absolutely fine. Even in this grand finale, which the trailers come out and it's all kind of like, they're saying goodbye. Lord Grantham saying goodbye. They don't say goodbye. Spoiler alert again. They don't say goodbye. They just move into Maggie Smith's dower house because she's dead. The Gilded Age is slightly different because that does challenge the status quo, because you've got an old rich and a new rich.
You have enough cliches to get you through the visit?
If not, I'll come to you.
Oh, here we go.
So let's connect these two shows, Downton Abbey and The Gilded Age. They both begin with a death. In the case of The Gilded Age, which is set in 1880s New York, it's the news of the death of the wayward brother of the establishment Van Ryn family that brings into the Van Ryn household in New York a young woman who challenges the family's snobbery and is willing to do what the family will never do, which is embrace the nouveau riche who are coming up in New York City. Would you call it a comedy?
I think The Gilded Age is one of the funniest shows that's been on American television in years. I mean, Christine Baranski and Cynthia Nixon, so they kind of take the roles of Maggie Smith and Penelope Wilton as the kind of the older women who are constantly bickering.
I don't understand. Which bit is not clear? None of it is clear.
Brilliant casting for her, having come out of the Sex and the City universe as the sort of sexually rapacious Miranda.
Anybody further from Miranda than the woman who becomes Mrs. 40, because of course she marries the Reverend, who dies in 2 episodes. But it's good because he leaves her the fortune because they've lost all the money. What he does for those older characters is explain how the world is changing, but once again makes it familiar and safe. It is slightly different because the challenge is really coming from the internal characters, not from external forces. It's not, there's a war on now, so we better think about whether Downton can survive.
I think there's a real feminist undertone to both of them. One of the big questions that they're trying to answer is, what role should divorced women be allowed to have in society? That's also something that's explored in the new Downton Abbey movie. I think there's a real narrative here about the growth of women's power. That's what we're going to see in the Downton Abbey movie too.
Yes, well, I mean, this is the thing, is that in Downton Abbey 1, Maggie Smith, who explains she's going to die soon, which surprisingly she actually does die, says to her, you will be the next me. Basically, Downton Abbey is the story of how Lady Mary succeeds Maggie Smith. And The Gilded Age is a lot like that. So Mrs. Russell is based on one of the great Vanderbilt matriarchs who was a suffragette. And the evil sister is basically who's English, says, "Well, we have a suffragette amongst us. We don't want women to vote here." And then she says to her, "Are you saying that Queen Victoria shouldn't have the right to our powers?" She is a challenging figure. It also introduces race in a way that isn't really explored in Downton Abbey because of completely
That's a great
completely
point.
different set of circumstances.
When so many established franchises are just doing colourblind casting. So you see in the new season of Wolf Hall, for example, Tudor courtiers are suddenly black because they've realised they needed to find a way to get some diversity in the cast. In The Gilded Age, what Julian Fellowes has done is thoughtfully examine the black elite of New York
exactly,
at that time,
and doesn't put them
the discrimination
exactly,
they face.
and doesn't put them in a position of victimhood, which I think is really important. They have agency. It shows that at that time, at least in the North, there was wealth and it was used. And it still explores racism. When Peggy is a journalist for a period of time, she goes down to the South and, it's all that kind of segregation there is explored. But it is quite well done. I think The Gilded Age is more sophisticated than Downton when it comes to that.
I love how there's equal kind of weight given to, who's going to be invited to the opening of the new Opera House to someone who's just been run over in the street and left the holiday house to the gay son who now has to explain why he's inheriting a holiday house from his secret lover.
I think it has to be said that season 1 of The Gilded Age was criticised because nothing really happens in it, which I think is true. Season 2 and 3, they fixed that, and it is incredibly dramatic and, as you said, ridiculous. But I think Julian Fellowes there's 2 things he understands through his casting of both shows and the way he constructs it. Britain has produced 2 great things for the world: theatre and soap operas. Those are the 2 things Britain is best at in the entire world. And he has got that perfectly.
Well, Richard, I have loved talking to you about this, if only to hear your range of Yorkshire accents. So I can't wait. I should have been
an actor instead of the Australian's Canberra bureau chief.
Thanks for that.